The next man coming on is the team principal of Red Bull, of course, the world champion, double world champion team. Please welcome onto the F1 racing stage, Christian Horner. Hi, Christian.
Good afternoon.
That was a bigger round of applause than we've had for many guests today from this particular section of the crowd.
Right, wow.
Your growing fan club, they've made me wear a badge as well.
Right.
So I'm now an official member of your fan club. It's quite strange, really, isn't it?
Yes, very. Especially as you're male.
Yeah, well, you know. So, another fantastic year for Red Bull in 2011, 2 titles. Where can you go from here? Is the momentum there to kick on again?
Yeah, I mean, 2011 was the most phenomenal year for us. To have won the World Championship in 2010 was something very special, and then it's a different pressure to defend both the drivers and constructors championship, and the way Sebastian drove last year, the steps and progress that the team made was phenomenal, and to win and retain both those titles was something very, very special. Of course, now the added challenge is to try and do it again, and when you're up against teams like McLaren, like Ferrari and Mercedes, there's they're certainly not backing off, and so it certainly doesn't get easier, that's for sure.
Now, I think there's only 2 drivers in the history of Formula 1 who've won 3 titles in a row. Fangio, I believe, and Michael Schumacher, of course. From knowing Seb as you do, what do you think his feeling is? He's a man who likes records. Is he going to be going for this 3 in a row? He wants 3 in a row more than anything. And how difficult do you think it is as you go on?
I think neither he nor the team are thinking about that for us. I think the focus is on Melbourne at the moment, on producing a car to the best of our ability. We'll then see how that compares with our rivals, and then you look to build a campaign from there. But the first focus obviously is on that first race. It would be phenomenal to achieve a triple, but it's not something that is expected in any way. It's something that we're focused on taking one race at a time, as we did throughout last year, and then the titles and championships tend to take care of themselves.
And how is the mood in the factory? Is everything running to plan? Are you on schedule for the car launch and everything like that?
No, the morale is obviously extremely high. There's a lot of late nights going on in Milton Keynes at the moment, and I mean, the team's working phenomenally hard, as I'm sure all the teams that are represented here are. It's that time of year where Christmas is almost inconvenient because you're flat out into the production of the new car. The cars run in early February. There's only 3 pre-season tests, and then it's everything's packed up and shipped off to Melbourne. So, but spirits are very, very high, and there's some superhuman efforts that are going on behind the scenes in the factory at the moment.
I'm sure there are, and slightly different for this year. We've got an in-season test, one in-season test. Does that change things much from your point of view? Does it change the way you go about racing?
Well, it gives an opportunity after that first block of flyaways to introduce some new components, to test them with the race drivers. What's basically happened is the pre-season tests have been reduced by 1, and that 1 test has been put after the first block of international races. So before we come back to Barcelona, I think there's 3 days in Mugello where no doubt the race drivers will want to drive the cars with any updates and developments that we have, and so it's a slight change, but nothing too significant.
Because you get the first batch of races, they're all flyaways, they're all a long way away. How much can you do to a car from the first race in Australia if it's not quite how you want it? Is there much you can do between when you're away at those flyaway races?
Well, the car effectively is a prototype, so every time the car runs we're looking to evolve it, and so at every Grand Prix, to a greater or lesser extent, there'll be something new on the car. It'll be constantly evolving. Some of it will be circuit specific at tracks like Monza, where obviously you run smaller wings, but the car is constantly evolving, and you look to make little steps of progress throughout the season, and quite possibly maybe we achieved 2 seconds of development last year. It's difficult to put accurate numbers on because you never go back to the race to your original specification of car. But the car is constantly evolving, and it becomes a development race, particularly amongst the leading teams, just who can get performance to the car the quickest, who can eke a little bit more performance out of the car, and that will obviously then show up on the stopwatch.
And looking back to last year, were there any particular moments that really stood out for you as being those standout moments that you'll never forget for the rest of your life? What were the races that you fondly remember?
There were some great races. I mean, to win in Melbourne, to win the opening race of the championship was special. The bookend in 2010. That was phenomenal for us. To win in Monaco is always very, very special. To throw Eddie Jordan in the swimming pool, that was a highlight.
That's a pretty good opportunity. You can't miss that, can you?
Exactly. So he was just in the wrong place at the right time. Winning in Spa, winning in Monza, which historically has not been one of our strongest tracks, to win in Singapore under the lights, to win the first ever race in India was something very special, and obviously to win the last race is always a good race to win, because it sets your year up your winter up very well.
And how much of this year's car, the RB8, how much will it be an evolution of what we saw last year? Is it a sort of, you're carrying on the concept that's been so successful, or is it new ideas coming through?
Well, the regulations are relatively stable. The biggest change to the regulations is the exhaust effect. So, of course, there'll be evolution to take that into account, but it will be from the same family of cars as the RB5, the RB6 and RB7. So it's an evolution, as I guess most of the cars, will be. We'll look to address some of the weaker areas and maximise some of the strong areas that were on the car. So, and that will obviously evolve, throughout the year. But that's the exciting thing about Formula One. It never stands still. If you stand still, you tend to be going backwards. So, with what cars run in that first test in Spain in the next few weeks' time, by the time they get to Melbourne, will be very different. By the time they get to Brazil at the end of the year, they're going to be massively different. And that's, Formula One is a 12-month cycle, and it's flat out from January the 1st pretty much to December the 31st.
It's the strange thing about Formula One that a car like the RB7 can become almost obsolete so quickly after winning a title. We're on to the next thing. We're on to improving the concept for the new car.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was great to run those cars for the last time through the middle of Milton Keynes after coming back from the final race. That was effectively the last time. Those cars will be in show or on action before obviously new cars start running in February.
I was going to say, what was that like, the experience of being in Milton Keynes, your hometown, the team's hometown? What was it like?
It was phenomenal, because the council shut the central area of the city on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. We had 60,000 people turn up to come and see the event, and both drivers, running in the cars, and they put on a great show, and it was a great event. It was a great celebration. Anybody that's been to Milton Keynes know there's a lot of roundabouts there, and it was quite unusual to see Formula One cars hurtling round the roundabout. So and no speeding fines, which was even better.
Do you think the drivers enjoy doing that type of thing, driving them on real roads?
For sure. The one time they get to abuse the machinery to do burnouts and donuts and all the things that we would hate them to do at the racetrack. So that, they, both Sebastian and Mark, had a big smile on their face, and getting close to the cars like these show runs enable, to see the sheer power of these cars, and to see the skill of the drivers performing the kind of tricks that they do is great to see, and the drivers thoroughly enjoy it. Sometimes we have to calm them down a little bit.
Speaking of drivers, I think it's sometimes easy to forget just how young Sebastian Vettel is. He's 24 now still. How much more is there to come from him? I mean, or is he the complete driver already?
I think that's the exciting thing about Sebastian. At such a young age, he's achieved so much, and I think he's only going to evolve. He's only going to get better, and he's very committed. He's very dedicated. He works tremendously hard. At his sport, he's obviously very naturally talented as well. But that's the exciting thing about him, is that I think we've only scratched on the surface so far. So it's down to us to make sure we give him a competitive car. But he's continuing to grow. I think 2011 was obviously a stronger year for him than 2010. I think with the confidence of having won the championship, having that on his CV already, going into the 2011 season, almost took a bit of pressure off him. And I think that his development and evolution in 2011 was quite phenomenal.
And of course, across the other side of the garage, Mark Webber, I think there's a tendency, because he's slightly older than Sebastian, to sort of write him off, say he's coming towards the end of his career. He doesn't see it that way, does he?
Absolutely, it'd be very foolish to write off Mark Webber. He's a massively competitive individual. He's very quick. He's up against the reigning world champion, which is a tough job for any driver currently in Formula One. And he's gone away having won that last race in Brazil. He's training hard over the winter, and I think what you notice about Mark is he's enjoying Formula One again. I think there are certain stages at the early part of last year that he didn't smile much, he didn't seem to be enjoying it, and that enjoyment seems to have come back. And I think as a result of that, we'll see Mark in better shape in 2012.
Well, it will certainly be good to see both drivers pushing each other as hard as possible, and hopefully to see you pushing Eddie Jordan back into the swimming pool at Monaco again.
Thank you very much
for joining us today, Christian Horner.
Thank you.